Hello everyone. Before the story start, tell me where are you watching from and what time is it?
The story went viral on a Tuesday morning. I know because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends, strangers, news alerts, all of them sharing the same headline: Florida man kidnapped by dolphins, forced to build underwater city. They were laughing. Everyone was laughing. The sheriff's office made a joke about their underwater construction investigation team. The satire page that posted it was celebrating their 15 minutes of fame. And I was sitting in a small motel room on the edge of the Gulf, staring at my hands, knowing that none of it was a joke. Because I was the Florida man. My name is Ricky. And the dolphins took me. It started on a night when the water was so still it looked like glass. I was on my boat, the same boat I'd lived on for years, anchored a few miles off the coast. The stars were out. The city was a distant glow. And then I heard them. Not with my ears. In my head. A voice that was wet and cold and old. Ricky, it said. We need you. I looked over the side. The dolphins were there. At least a dozen of them, circling my boat, their eyes reflecting the moonlight. They weren't jumping or playing. They were just watching. Waiting. And they were smiling. I had seen dolphins smile before, that curved shape of their mouths that humans mistake for happiness. But this was different. This was knowing. This was intention. I should have started the engine. I should have gone back to shore and never returned to that spot. But I didn't. I stood at the railing and watched them circle, and the voice came again. Come down, Ricky. We have something to show you. I don't remember getting into the water. I don't remember diving. I just remember the cold, and the dark, and the feeling of being pulled. The dolphins surrounded me, their bodies smooth against my skin, guiding me deeper than I had ever gone. I should have drowned. I should have run out of air. But I didn't. The dolphins were breathing for me, or the water was different down there, or something had changed in my lungs that I didn't understand yet. We reached the bottom. It was not the bottom I knew. There were no rocks, no sand, no wreckage. There were foundations. Walls. Streets. A city that had been started and abandoned, waiting for someone to finish it. The dolphins released me. I stood on the ocean floor, my feet touching something that felt like stone, and I looked around. The buildings were half-built. The roads were laid out in patterns that were too perfect to be natural. And on every surface, scratched into the stone, were drawings. Blueprints. Designs for condos and town squares and parks. All of them made by something that had no hands. You will finish it, the voice said. Not from one dolphin. From all of them. A chorus of wet, cold words that filled my head and left no room for anything else. You will build our city. And when it is done, you will stay. I built. I don't know how long I was down there. Days? Weeks? Time moves differently when you cannot see the sun. I moved stones that should have been too heavy. I carved shapes that should have been impossible. The dolphins watched. They circled me while I worked, their smiles never fading, their eyes never blinking. Sometimes they brought me things, shells, bones, fragments of old shipwrecks, and I incorporated them into the walls. The city grew. Condos rose from the sand. A town square took shape. A park with benches made of coral and streets that curved like the bodies of the dolphins themselves. I started to forget the surface. I started to forget my boat, my name, the feeling of air in my lungs. The water was my home now. The dolphins were my family. And the city was my purpose. I worked until my hands were raw, until my fingers pruned and wrinkled and began to look less like fingers and more like flippers. I worked until I caught my reflection in a smooth stone and saw that my eyes had changed. They were darker now. Colder. And they reflected light the way dolphin eyes reflect light. That was when I stopped. I looked at my hands. I looked at the city. I looked at the dolphins, who were still circling, still smiling, still watching. And I ran. I don't know how I found the surface. I don't know how my lungs remembered how to breathe air. I just know that one moment I was standing on the ocean floor, and the next I was breaking through the surface, gasping, crying, swimming toward a shore I had forgotten existed. I made it back. I found my boat. I went home. And I told no one. Not at first. But the story came out anyway, not from me, but from someone who had seen me stumble out of the water, who had heard me muttering about dolphins and cities and blueprints drawn in sand. It spread. It mutated. It became a joke. Florida man kidnapped by dolphins. The sheriff's office made their statement. The satire page claimed credit. And everyone laughed. But I am not laughing. I am sitting in this motel room, typing this by the light of a single lamp, because I cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the water. I feel the cold. I see the dolphins circling, smiling, waiting. And I know that the city is still down there. Incomplete. Waiting for me to come back and finish what I started. Sometimes, late at night, I go to the beach. I stand at the edge of the water and I look out at the gulf. The dolphins are there. I can see their eyes reflecting the moonlight, the same way they did on that first night. They don't come close. They don't need to. They know I will return. They know I cannot stay away forever. The city needs me. The dolphins need me. And somewhere, deep in my chest, in the place where my lungs remember how to breathe water, I need them too. I have not gone back. Not yet. But my hands are changing. My fingers are getting thinner, the skin between them growing soft, the way skin grows soft when it has been in water for too long. My eyes are darker. And when I smile, people look away. They say it's a strange smile. They say it doesn't look human. They don't know how right they are. The dolphins took me. They made me build their city. And when I finish it, because I will finish it, someday, they will take me again. And this time, I won't come back. I will stay down there, in the dark, in the cold, with the dolphins and their smiles and the city that I built with my own two hands. I will become one of them. I will forget the surface. I will forget the air. I will forget my name. But I will remember the city. I will remember every stone, every wall, every bench in the park. And when the next Florida man stumbles into the water, drawn by a voice he cannot explain, I will be there. Smiling. Waiting. Ready to show him the blueprints. The dolphins are real. The city is real. And the story that made the world laugh? It was never a joke. It was a warning. I am the warning. And I am still here. For now. The first report came in on a Thursday. I know because I was the one who took the call. My name is Detective Mara Coleridge, and I've worked for the Portage County Sheriff's Office for 14 years. I've seen things. Car wrecks, house fires, domestic disputes that turned into something worse. But I had never taken a call like the one that came in at 11:47 p.m. on March 6th. A woman, her voice shaking, said she had been driving down Old Mill Road when something stepped out of the tree line. She said it was tall. Too tall. 6 feet, maybe 7. Covered in hair that was dark and matted and seemed to absorb the light from her headlights. She said it didn't run. It didn't charge. It just stood there, at the edge of the road, and watched her drive past. She said she was close enough to see its hands. Its fingers. She said they looked almost human, but longer, thinner, with nails that curved like claws. I wrote down her statement. I thanked her for calling. I hung up the phone and I told myself it was a bear. We have black bears in Ohio. Not many, but enough. A bear standing on its hind legs could look like a man. A bear in the dark could look like something else. I filed the report and I went home and I did not think about it again. The second report came the next night. A man on the east side of the county called to say his German Shepherd had been acting strange. The dog was usually calm, he said. Protective, but not aggressive. But that night, the dog was standing in the backyard, facing the woods, and it was shaking. Not growling. Not barking. Just shaking, the way dogs shake when they are terrified of something they cannot understand. The man went outside with a flashlight. He scanned the tree line. He saw nothing. But the dog kept shaking. And then, from somewhere deep in the woods, he heard a sound. Not a howl. Not a growl. Something else. Something low and heavy, like a breath being pushed through something that was not a throat. I filed that report too. I told myself it was a coyote. A deer. Wind moving through the branches. I told myself a lot of things that week. The third report came on Saturday. A group of teenagers camping near the Cuyahoga River said they had seen it watching them from across the water. They said it was at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. They said it stood perfectly still for almost an hour, just staring at their campfire, and then it turned and walked back into the trees without making a sound. They said the woods went quiet when it was there. No crickets. No owls. No wind. Just silence, and the thing, and the fire that seemed to burn lower the longer it watched. I drove out to the campsite the next morning. The teenagers were gone. Their fire was cold. And there, in the mud at the edge of the river, I found a footprint. It was not a bear print. Bears have 5 toes, wide and round. This print had 3. 3 long, narrow impressions, like fingers, and a deeper impression where the heel should have been. It was fresh. It was large. And it was pointed away from the river, toward the woods, toward the dark. I did not tell anyone about the footprint. I covered it with leaves and I went back to my car and I sat there for a long time, staring at the tree line, trying to convince myself that there was an explanation. There is always an explanation. That is what I tell myself. That is what I have told myself for 14 years. The fourth report came on Sunday. A woman called to say she had seen it from her kitchen window. She lived on the edge of a wooded property, the kind of place where the trees start at the back fence and go for miles. She said she was washing dishes when she looked up and saw it standing at the edge of the woods, watching her house. She said it stood there for several minutes, not moving, just watching, and then it took a step forward. Just one step. She said she dropped her plate. It shattered on the floor. And when she looked up again, the thing was gone. But the woods were not empty. She could feel it. She could feel it watching her from somewhere in the dark. I visited her that afternoon. She was an older woman, calm, practical. She had lived in that house for 30 years. She had never reported anything like this before. She made me tea. She showed me the broken plate, still on the floor. She pointed to the spot where it had stood. And then she said something that has stayed with me, that has followed me into my dreams, that has made it impossible for me to look at the woods the same way again. She said, it didn't want to be seen. It wanted to be felt. That's why it stood there. That's why it let me see it. It wanted me to feel afraid. It wanted me to know that it was there. That it had always been there. That we just hadn't noticed. I asked her what she meant. She looked at me with eyes that were old and tired and full of something I could not name. People think Bigfoot is a creature, she said. Something that lives in the woods and hides from cameras and leaves footprints. But that's not what it is. It's not a creature. It's a presence. Something old. Something that has been here longer than we have. And sometimes, for reasons we don't understand, it decides to let us know it's here. It steps out of the trees. It stands at the edge of the road. It watches us from across the river. And then it goes back. And we spend the rest of our lives wondering if we really saw what we saw. The fifth and sixth reports came within hours of each other. A man driving home from work saw it cross the road in front of his car. He said it moved quickly, with a gait that was almost human but not quite, the arms swinging too long, the shoulders too high. He said he slammed on his brakes and watched it disappear into the trees on the other side. And then, a few hours later, a family hiking on a trail near the county line said they heard something following them. Not footsteps. Just a presence. A weight in the air behind them. They said they didn't run. They didn't look back. They just walked faster, and faster, and the thing kept pace with them, just out of sight, until they reached the parking lot and got in their car and locked the doors. I have not filed these reports. I have not told my colleagues about the footprint. I have not told anyone about the dreams I have been having since that woman spoke to me about presence. In the dreams, I am standing at the edge of the woods. It is night. The trees are dark, the way trees are dark when there is no moon. And I can feel it. Watching me. Not from one place. From everywhere. From the trees, from the ground, from the air itself. It is not a creature. It is not a bear or a coyote or a man in a costume. It is something else. Something that has been here for a very long time. Something that is only now deciding to let us know that it exists. I woke up this morning with dirt under my fingernails. I do not know how it got there. I do not know where I was last night. I do not know why the woods behind my house feel different now, heavier, the way air feels heavy before a storm. I do not know why the deer have stopped coming to my yard, why the birds have gone quiet, why my dog refuses to go outside after dark. But I know that the reports are real. The witnesses are real. And the thing in the woods is real. Not because I have seen it. Because I have felt it. The way the woman felt it from her kitchen window. The way the teenagers felt it from across the river. The way the German shepherd felt it in the backyard, shaking, unable to move, unable to do anything but stand there and wait for it to leave. It didn't want to be seen. It wanted to be felt. And now that we have felt it, now that we have opened our eyes and our windows and our minds to its presence, it is not going away. It is staying. It is watching. And it is waiting for us to realize that we are not the only ones who have been here all along. I am typing this from my office. The sun is setting. The woods behind the building are darkening. And I can feel it. At the edge of the tree lean. Watching. Waiting. Not moving. Just present. The way it has always been present, for longer than we know, for longer than we can imagine. The reports will stop eventually. The news crews will leave. The Bigfoot Society will move on to the next sighting. But the thing in the woods will still be here. It will always be here. And now, so will we. Watching. Waiting. Feeling it watch us back. The video came across my For You page on a Tuesday. A fireworks display over the Brooklyn Bridge, so bright and so beautiful that it looked like the sky was bleeding gold. The caption said, NYC's biggest NYE fireworks show ever, Brooklyn Bridge Park. Don't miss it. The account had millions of followers. The video had millions of views. I saved it. I tagged my friends. I started planning. That was the thing about those videos. They were perfect. Too perfect. The colors were richer than any real fireworks I had ever seen. The sound was clearer. The reflections on the water moved in ways that felt almost deliberate, almost alive. But I didn't notice that then. None of us did. We just watched, and we believed, and we made our plans. The first sign that something was wrong came on the morning of December 31st. I was checking the weather, deciding what coat to wear, when I saw a post from Time Out New York. They had listed the Brooklyn Bridge Park fireworks as a top spot for NYE. I remember feeling relieved. If Time Out said it was real, it was real. I texted my friends. It's legit. See you at 11. The second sign came when I arrived at the park. It was cold. The kind of cold that settles into your bones and makes you forget what warmth feels like. But there were already hundreds of people there. Thousands. Families with children. Couples holding hands. Groups of friends taking selfies in front of the bridge. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was excited. Everyone believed. I found my friends near the front, close to the water. We hugged. We took pictures. We talked about how amazing it was going to be. No one mentioned that there were no fireworks barges on the river. No one mentioned that there were no barricades, no police, no event staff. No one mentioned that the only light on the water was the reflection of the city, cold and distant and indifferent. We waited. The crowd grew. By 11:30, there were thousands of us, packed against the railings, our breath fogging in the air, our phones held high, ready to capture the moment. Someone started a countdown. Not at 11:59. Earlier. At 11:45, a voice in the crowd shouted, 10 minutes, and everyone laughed. The energy was electric. We were all part of something. We were all believing the same thing. At 11:58, the crowd began to count. 10. 9. 8. I joined in. We all joined in. The numbers rose into the cold air, a chorus of strangers united by a shared anticipation. 7. 6. 5. I looked at the sky. It was empty. Dark. The bridge was lit up, beautiful, but the sky above it was nothing. 4. 3. 2. I felt something shift. A cold that was not the cold of the air. A silence that was not the silence of the crowd. 1. The crowd cheered. Thousands of voices, shouting, screaming, celebrating a thing that was not happening. I stood there, my hands raised, my mouth open, and I watched the sky. Nothing. No fireworks. No light. No sound. Just the dark, and the bridge, and the river that reflected nothing. The cheering faded. People began to look around. Confused. Uncertain. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else said, maybe they're late. A woman near me pulled out her phone. She scrolled for a moment, and then her face changed. The color drained from it. She looked up at the sky, then at the crowd, then back at her phone. It's fake, she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence that had fallen over the crowd, everyone heard her. It's AI. The videos. The posts. Time out. It's all fake. There are no fireworks. There were never any fireworks. The crowd began to murmur. The sound of it was strange, a low, rising hum, like the sound of something breaking. People started to leave. Not running, just walking, their shoulders hunched, their phones clutched in their hands. Some were crying. Some were laughing, the hollow laugh of disbelief. A young man near me shouted, "Did we get pranked?" We got pranked. He was smiling, but his eyes were not smiling. His eyes were confused, hurt, betrayed. I stood there with my friends. We didn't speak. We just watched the crowd disperse, watched the thousands of people who had believed the same thing we had believed, who had stood in the freezing cold and counted down to a midnight that had never existed. And then I heard it. A whisper. Not from the crowd. From somewhere else. Somewhere in the dark, somewhere in the sky, somewhere in the space between the bridge and the river. It was faint, almost inaudible, but I heard it. A voice. Not human. Not machine. Something else. It was counting. Not forward. Backward. 10. 9. 8. The same numbers we had shouted, but in reverse. Slower. Deeper. As if something was undoing our countdown, erasing our anticipation, replacing it with something I could not name. I grabbed my friend's arm. Did you hear that? She looked at me. Her face was pale. Hear what? The counting continued. 7. 6. 5. I looked at the crowd. No one else seemed to notice. They were leaving, arguing, checking their phones. But I heard it. Clearer now. Closer. 4. 3. 2. 1. The sky did not explode with light. The river did not reflect gold. But something happened. Something I cannot explain. The air grew heavier. The cold grew deeper. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw something in the dark above the bridge. Not fireworks. Shapes. Faces. Hundreds of them, pressed against the sky, looking down at us. Looking down at the thousands of people who had gathered to watch something that was not there. They were smiling. I blinked. The shapes were gone. The sky was empty. The crowd was almost gone. My friends were tugging at my arm, saying something about getting warm, about finding a bar, about forgetting this ever happened. I let them pull me away. I walked with them, back through the park, back toward the city, back toward the world where fireworks were real and AI was just a tool and nothing was watching from the dark. But I knew. I knew that the videos were not just fake. They were bait. Something had wanted us to come. Something had wanted us to stand in the freezing cold and count down to midnight. Something had wanted to hear our voices, our anticipation, our belief. And when we shouted, "One," when we cheered for a thing that was not there, something had counted back. Something had answered. I have not told anyone about the shapes in the sky. I have not told anyone about the voice. I have gone back to my life, to my apartment, to my job. I have scrolled past the news articles, the viral videos, the jokes about the NYC fireworks prank. I have laughed when my friends laughed, shrugged when they shrugged, agreed that it was a crazy story, a weird story, a story we would tell for years. But late at night, when the city is quiet and the sky is dark, I hear it. The counting. Not every night. Just sometimes. Just when I am alone. Just when I am starting to forget. 10. 9. 8. The voice is closer now. The shapes are clearer. They are not faces. They are something else. I woke up at 6:03 a.m. I know the exact time because my phone was on the nightstand and the screen lit up with a notification I never read. I didn't wake up because of the notification. I woke up because something felt wrong. The way things feel wrong when you are asleep and your body knows something is there before your mind does. I lay still for a moment, listening. The house was quiet. The woods outside were quiet. The snow that had fallen overnight had muffled everything, the way snow does, turning the world into a place where sound goes to die. But something had woken me. Something had pulled me out of sleep the way a hand pulls a thread from a sweater. I got up. I put on my robe. I walked to the front door. The footprints were on the porch. I saw them through the window before I opened the door. A trail of them, leading from the steps to the door, then turning, then leading back. They were fresh. The snow had stopped falling around 4 a.m., the weather report said later, so these prints had been made after that. Made by someone who had walked up to my door, stood there, and then walked away. I opened the door. The cold hit my face, sharp and clean. I looked down at the prints. They were bare. No shoes, no boots, no socks. Just feet. Human feet. The toes were clear, each one distinct, pressed into the snow with a weight that suggested someone standing still. Someone standing on tiptoe. Someone trying to be quiet. My first thought was my husband. He had been asleep next to me. I had felt him there, his warmth, his breathing. But I checked anyway. I turned and looked at the bedroom door. It was still closed. I could hear him snoring, that soft, familiar sound that had been part of my nights for 15 years. He had not been on the porch. He had not made these prints. I looked back at the footprints. There was something wrong with them. Not just because they were bare in the snow. Something else. The size. They were small. Smaller than my husband's feet. Smaller than mine. The size of a child's feet, maybe, or a small woman's. But the depth of them was wrong. They were too deep for feet that small. Too heavy. As if the person who made them weighed much more than their size suggested. I called the sheriff. They sent a deputy out around 8 a.m. He was young, polite, the kind of cop who takes everything seriously because he hasn't been doing it long enough to know what to ignore. He looked at the footprints. He took pictures. He measured them. He walked the perimeter of the house, looking for other signs. He found nothing. No other prints in the snow. No broken windows. No forced entry. Just the prints on the porch, leading to the door and back. Could be a kid, he said. Kids do weird things. Walk around barefoot in the snow. Play pranks. I told him the prints were too deep for a kid. He shrugged. He said the snow had been wet, heavy. He said a kid could have made prints that deep if they jumped, if they landed hard. He said not to worry. He said to lock the doors and call if anything else happened. He left. I stood on the porch and looked at the footprints. They were already starting to melt, the edges softening, the toes blurring. I took out my phone and took my own pictures. I posted them on Reddit, because I didn't know what else to do. I thought someone might have an explanation. I thought someone might have seen something like this before. The post blew up. 36,000 upvotes in less than a day. Thousands of comments. Theories. Demon child. Tiny Bigfoot. Sleepwalking neighbor. Prankster with a grudge. Aliens. Ghosts. Everything. I read them all, sitting on my couch, watching the snow fall again, watching the footprints disappear under a fresh layer of white. The comments made me feel less alone. They also made me feel more afraid. Because the more I read, the more I realized that no one knew what this was. No one had seen anything like it. No one could explain the size, the depth, the way the toes were pressed into the snow like someone standing on tiptoe, trying to be quiet, trying not to wake me. My husband thought I was overreacting. He had seen the prints before they melted. He had agreed they were strange. But he didn't lose sleep over them. He didn't lie awake at night, listening to the house settle, wondering if something was standing on the porch again, on tiptoe, breathing through the crack under the door. I started checking the porch every morning. Before coffee, before anything, I would walk to the front door and look out the window. Most mornings, the snow was undisturbed. Clean. White. Empty. But some mornings, there were prints. Not every day. Not even every week. But sometimes. Always bare. Always small. Always too deep. always leading to the door and back. I never heard anything. That was the worst part. The silence. The snow muffled everything, but even in the silence, I should have heard something. A footstep. A breath. A hand on the door. But there was nothing. Just the prints, appearing overnight, like a message I could not read. I installed cameras. 2 of them, pointing at the porch from different angles. I checked the footage every morning. Nothing. The cameras showed the porch, empty, covered in snow. Then a glitch. A flicker. And then the prints were there, as if they had always been there, as if something had stepped between the frames of the video, moved in the space that cameras cannot see. I stopped checking the footage. I stopped posting on Reddit. I stopped telling my husband about the prints. I just lived with them. The way you live with a sound you cannot identify, a smell you cannot place, a feeling that something is watching you from the tree lean. I lived with the knowledge that something was coming to my porch at night, standing on tiptoe, pressing its bare feet into the snow, and leaving before I could wake up. The truth came out a month later. My husband confessed. He had been letting the dog out at night, around 2 a.m., when he couldn't sleep. He hadn't wanted to wake me. He hadn't wanted to put on boots. He had just stepped outside in his bare feet, stood on the porch while the dog did its business, and gone back inside. The prints were his. The size looked small because the snow had melted and refrozen, shrinking the impressions. The depth was wrong because he had been standing on tiptoe, trying to stay warm, trying to be quiet. The cameras hadn't caught him because he had unplugged them. He didn't like being recorded. He didn't think to tell me. I laughed when he told me. I cried. I threw a pillow at him. He apologized. He promised to wear boots. He promised to tell me when he couldn't sleep. He promised not to let me live in fear of something that was just him, just the dog, just the snow. I forgave him. Of course I forgave him. He was my husband. He was the man I loved. He had not meant to terrify me. He had just been cold and tired and careless. But here is the thing I have not told him. Here is the thing I have not told anyone. The morning after he confessed, I woke up at 6 a.m. I walked to the front door. I looked out the window. The porch was covered in fresh snow, undisturbed, clean. And then I saw them. Prints. Leading from the steps to the door. Leading back. Bare. Small. Too deep. The same prints I had been seeing for weeks. The same prints my husband had confessed to making. But my husband had been asleep next to me. I had felt him there, his warmth, his breathing. He had not let the dog out at 2 a.m. He had not stood on the porch in his bare feet. He had been in bed, beside me, all night. I did not tell him. I did not call the sheriff. I did not post on Reddit. I just stood there, looking at the prints, feeling the cold through the glass, feeling something else. Something that was not cold. Something that was watching me from the tree lean, from the dark, from the space between the frames of the video. I still check the porch every morning. Some mornings, the snow is clean. Some mornings, there are prints. My husband thinks it's his fault. He thinks he forgot. He thinks he sleepwalks. He thinks there is an explanation. I let him think that. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is that something has been coming to my porch for months, standing on tiptoe, pressing its bare feet into the snow, and leaving before I can wake up. The alternative is that it knows my husband confessed. The alternative is that it wants me to know that he was not the only one. The footprints on my porch didn't belong to anyone I knew. But they belonged to something. Something that is still out there. Something that is still watching. Something that will come back, when the snow falls again, when the house is quiet, when I am asleep and dreaming of nothing. It will stand on my porch. On tiptoe. And it will wait. It will always wait. It was almost midnight when we decided to walk home. My sister and I had been at a friend's apartment, the kind of night that stretches into hours of talking and cheap wine and the particular warmth of being understood. But the wine ran out, and the tiredness set in, and we realized we had missed the last bus. The walk was only 20 minutes. Through the neighborhood, past the school, down the street where the streetlights were spaced too far apart and the darkness pooled in between like something waiting. We walked quickly. The air was cool, the kind of cool that comes after a warm day, when the ground releases the heat it has been holding and the sky is clear and full of stars. I was telling my sister about something that had happened at work, something I don't remember now, something that seemed important at the time but would later be swallowed by what we saw. We turned onto a residential street. The houses were dark, the cars were parked, the sidewalks were empty. Except for the children. They were standing on the sidewalk ahead of us. 2 of them. Small. Motionless. Facing us. They were maybe 50 feet away, close enough to see their shapes, too far to see their faces. But I could feel their eyes. The way you feel eyes when someone is watching you from across a room, from the other end of a train car, from a dark sidewalk in the middle of the night. I stopped walking. My sister stopped beside me. We didn't speak. We just stood there, frozen, the way you freeze when your body knows something is wrong before your mind does. The children did not move. They did not shift their weight. They did not turn to each other. They just stood there, on the sidewalk, facing us, waiting. My heart was pounding. I could feel it in my throat, in my temples, in the tips of my fingers. I told myself they were just children. Children walked home late sometimes. Children had parents who let them stay out past midnight. Children were not threats. But these children were not moving. They were not talking. They were not looking at their phones or tugging at their jackets or doing any of the small, restless things that children do when they are standing still. They were just standing. Frozen. Like statues. Like mannequins. Like something that was trying very hard to look like children but had not yet learned how to move. My sister whispered my name. Her voice was thin, the way voices get when they are trying not to be heard. We should cross the street. I nodded. I took her hand. We stepped off the sidewalk and onto the road. The asphalt was dark, the lines barely visible in the dim light from the street lamps. We walked on the road, giving the sidewalk a wide berth, keeping our eyes on the children. They did not turn. They did not follow. They just stood there, facing the spot where we had been, as if they were still watching us even though we were no longer there. We walked faster. The children grew smaller behind us. I did not look back. I did not want to see if they were still standing there. I did not want to see if they had started to move. When we reached my sister's apartment, we locked the door. We checked the windows. We turned on every light. We sat on the couch, side by side, not speaking, just breathing, just trying to slow our hearts. And then we laughed. The way you laugh when something terrible almost happens, when you realize you are safe, when the adrenaline drains out of you and leaves you hollow and shaking and grateful. What were they doing? My sister asked. Why were they just standing there? I shook my head. I did not have an answer. I did not want an answer. I wanted to forget. I wanted to close my eyes and wake up in the morning and convince myself that it had been nothing. Just children. Just a late night. Just my imagination. But I could not forget. The image of them was burned into my mind. 2 small figures, motionless on the dark sidewalk, facing us. Waiting. Not breathing. Not blinking. Just standing. The way something stands when it is not alive but wants you to think it is. The next morning, we went back. I don't know why. Maybe we needed to prove to ourselves that it had been ordinary. That the sidewalk was empty. That the children were just children who had gone home to their beds and their dreams and their ordinary lives. We walked to the spot. The sidewalk was empty. The street was quiet. The sun was up, the world was normal, and I almost believed that we had imagined it. Then my sister pointed. "There," she said. I looked. On the sidewalk, near the spot where the children had been standing, there were 2 lawn chairs. Folding chairs, the kind you take to a beach or a backyard barbecue. They were facing the street. They were empty. And they were the exact height of children. We stood there for a long time. Looking at the chairs. Looking at each other. I felt something that was not relief. It was something else. Something colder. Because the chairs explained the shapes. They explained the stillness. They explained why the children had not moved or spoken or blinked. But the chairs did not explain why I had felt eyes on me. The chairs did not explain why my heart had pounded, why my body had frozen, why my sister had whispered my name like a prayer. The chairs did not explain the feeling that something had been watching us from the dark, something that wanted us to see it, something that wanted us to be afraid. My sister laughed. "Lawn chairs," she said. We were terrified of lawn chairs. She pulled out her phone. She started recording. She walked up to the chairs and pointed the camera at them. "These are the creepy children," she said. "Just chairs. We got pranked by furniture." She posted the video. It went viral. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. People laughing at us, with us, admitting that they would have been fooled too. "I saw this and thought it was real," they wrote. "I would have run the other way," they wrote. "The way they're facing the street is so creepy," they wrote. My sister thought it was hilarious. She showed me the comments. She laughed at the memes. She turned our terror into content, into shares, into a story we would tell at parties. I laughed too. I posted a comment. I played along. But I did not tell her what I saw when I looked at the chairs. I did not tell her that when I looked at them, I still saw the children. Not the chairs. The children. The way they had stood on the sidewalk, facing us, waiting. I did not tell her that I had gone back to that street at midnight, alone, and stood where we had stood, and looked at the chairs. They were still there. Still facing the street. Still the height of children. But they were not empty. I could feel something sitting in them. Something that was not there. Something that had been there that night, watching us, enjoying our fear. I do not walk on that street anymore. I take the long way. My sister thinks I am being dramatic. She thinks I am holding on to a joke that has already been told. She does not understand that the chairs were not the thing. The chairs were just the shape. The thing was what was using the chairs. The thing that stood on that sidewalk every night, facing the street, waiting for someone to walk by. The thing that wanted to be seen. The thing that wanted to be feared. I saw its eyes. I felt its gaze. I know that it is still there, in the dark between the streetlights, in the space where the shadows pool. It sits in those chairs. It watches. It waits. And someday, someone will walk by who does not run. Someone will walk up to those chairs and look closely. And the thing will not be a chair anymore. It will be what it has always been. What it has been waiting to become. My sister posted a video of lawn chairs. The world laughed. But I saw the children. I saw them standing on the dark sidewalk, just staring at us. And I know that they were not chairs. Not then. Not when we saw them. Not when they watched us cross the street and walk away. The chairs came later. The chairs were the explanation. The chairs were the lie we told ourselves so we could sleep at night. I do not sleep. Not well. Not deeply. I lie awake and I think about the children. Their stillness. Their eyes. The way they did not blink. The way they did not breathe. The way they stood on the dark sidewalk, waiting for us to get closer, waiting for us to see what they really were. We did not get closer. We crossed the street. We walked away. We are alive. But the children are still there. In the dark. In the chairs. In the space between the streetlights. Waiting for the next woman to walk by. Waiting for the next moment of fear. Waiting to be seen again. Waiting to be believed. The intersection was one I had driven through 1,000 times. 72nd and Pacific. A place so ordinary that I had stopped seeing it years ago. The gas station on the corner. The bank with the digital sign that always read a few degrees too high. The crosswalk where the same man in the same gray coat waited for the light every morning. I knew this intersection the way you know the face of someone you have lived with for years. Familiar. Unremarkable. Safe. That morning was no different. I was running late for work, the way I was always running late. My coffee was in the cup holder, lukewarm and bitter. The radio was playing something I wasn't listening to. I stopped at the red light behind a silver Dodge Ram. To my left, a maroon Jeep pulled up beside me. The light turned green. The Ram started forward. The Jeep started forward. I started forward. And then the ground opened. There is no other way to say it. The asphalt didn't crack. It didn't crumble. It opened. A hole appeared beneath the Ram, beneath the Jeep, beneath the space between them. One moment they were there, solid and real. The next moment they were falling. Not fast. Slow. The way things fall in dreams, when gravity is a suggestion and time is a thick, heavy thing. I slammed my brakes. My coffee spilled. The radio kept playing. I sat in my car, my hands frozen on the steering wheel, and I watched the two vehicles sink into the earth. The Ram tilted backward, its headlights pointing at the sky, and then it was gone. The Jeep followed, nose first, swallowed by a darkness that seemed to have no bottom. I heard the crash. The sound of metal on something that was not metal. The sound of glass breaking. The sound of water rushing. And then silence. The kind of silence that comes after something impossible, when the world holds its breath and waits to see what happens next. I got out of my car. My legs were shaking. My hands were shaking. I walked to the edge of the hole. It was larger than I had expected. Wider than the intersection. Deeper than the light could reach. I could see the Ram at the bottom, crumpled, half submerged in dark water. The Jeep was beside it, on its side, one wheel still spinning. And then I saw him. The driver of the Ram. He was climbing out of his window, pulling himself onto the roof of his truck, his arms shaking, his breath fogging in the cold air. He looked up at me. His face was pale, his eyes wide, but he was alive. He was moving. "Call 911, he shouted. His voice echoed up from the hole, strange and hollow. "There's someone in the Jeep. I'm going to help." I pulled out my phone. I dialed. I gave them the address. I told them there was a sinkhole, that 2 cars had fallen, that people were trapped. The operator said they were on their way. I hung up. I looked back at the hole. The Ram driver had made it to the Jeep. He was pulling at the door, trying to open it. The water was rising. I could see it now, dark and fast, pouring from a broken pipe somewhere beneath the street. The driver of the Jeep was inside, conscious, reaching toward the door. Their hands met. The Ram driver pulled. The door opened. The Jeep driver climbed out. I watched them stand on the crumpled metal, their arms around each other, their breath mixing in the cold air. They were alive. Both of them. They had fallen into the earth, into the dark, into the water, and they had climbed out. They had helped each other. They had survived. The rescue took hours. Firefighters, police, ambulances. Cranes and cables and men in harnesses descending into the hole. I watched from behind the yellow tape, my coffee cold in my hand, my car still sitting at the light. They brought the drivers up first. The man from the Ram. The woman from the Jeep. They were covered in mud and water and what looked like blood, but they were walking. They were talking. They were alive. The news crews arrived. The cameras rolled. The story spread. Sinkhole swallows 2 cars. Miraculous escape. Viral video. Millions of views. I watched it all from the edge of the tape, and I told myself that I had seen something amazing. Something terrifying. Something that would be on the news for days and then forgotten. But I did not tell them what else I saw. I did not tell the reporters. I did not tell the police. I did not tell anyone. When the Ram driver was climbing out of his window, when he was standing on the roof of his truck, when he was looking up at me and shouting for help, I saw something behind him. In the water. In the dark. A shape. Not the Jeep. Not the truck. Something else. Something that was moving in the water, beneath the water, through the water. Something that was not debris. Something that was not a pipe. Something that was alive. I told myself it was a shadow. A trick of the light. The reflection of the streetlights above, distorted by the water and the darkness. I told myself a lot of things. But I saw it. I saw the shape turn. I saw it look up. Not at the Ram driver. Not at the Jeep driver. At me. I felt its eyes on me, even though it had no eyes. I felt its attention, heavy and cold, pressing against my chest. The water rose. The shape sank. The Ram driver climbed to the Jeep. The rescue continued. And I stood behind the yellow tape, my coffee cold in my hand, and I tried to forget what I had seen. I have not forgotten. I have not slept. I have not driven through that intersection, even though it has been repaired, even though the ground is solid, even though the news has moved on to other stories. I take the long way now. The way that avoids that corner. The way that keeps me above ground, in the light, where I can see what is beneath me. Because I know now. The ground is not solid. It is not safe. It is a thin skin stretched over something old, something dark, something that has been waiting for us to forget. The sinkhole did not open because of a water main break. The water main broke because the sinkhole opened. Because something beneath the street wanted to be seen. Wanted to remind us that we are not the only ones here. That we have built our cities on top of something that was here before us. Something that is still here. Something that is patient. The drivers survived. They climbed out. They helped each other. They told their stories to the cameras, and the world called it a miracle. But I saw what was in the water. I saw the shape that turned and looked at me. I felt its attention. And I know that it was not a miracle. It was a message. The sinkhole swallowed 2 cars. The drivers climbed out. But something else climbed in. Something that had been waiting for the ground to open. Something that is now walking among us, wearing borrowed skin, learning our faces, our voices, our fears. The man from the Ram. The woman from the Jeep. They are not who they were. They are not what they seem. I saw it in their eyes when they looked at the cameras. A flicker. A darkness. A thing that was not there before. I do not know how to warn anyone. I do not know how to say what I saw without sounding like the kind of person who sees things that are not there. So I write this. Here. In the dark. In the quiet. Hoping that someone will read it and understand. Hoping that someone will look at the videos, the news reports, the smiling faces of the survivors, and see what I saw. The ground opened beneath them. Something looked back. And now something is walking among us. Be careful who you call a survivor. Be careful who you let into your home. Be careful when you drive through an intersection that has been repaired. The ground is thin. The dark is deep. And something down there is still watching. Still waiting. Still hungry.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.